Discovered by fate. A rejected mail-order bride's incredible rescue by a lonely sheriff who is a... Jenna stepped off the bus, a whirlwind of dust swirling around her like a tornado. The heat of that Montana sun pressed down on her like an old weight, each step toward the dilapidated streets of the struggling town heavy with uncertainty. She never imagined her yearning for adventure would lead to this dusty, far-flung place. Back in her small Ohio village, her family had clung to her decision to become a mail-order bride. But the rejection that had led her here felt like a gaping hole in her heart. In the distance, the town's bakery called to her, a haven of warmth, smell of fresh bread wafting through the air. She approached it, her hopeful spirit urging her forward. A little bell jingled as she entered, instantly greeted by a warmth that enveloped her. The local baker, a kind lady with flour-dusted hands, took her in with a smile. "You here for a job, dear?" Jenna nodded, her heart racing as she submerged herself into the rhythm of kneading, rolling, and baking. Day by day, her bond with the locals grew. Each roll of dough, each slice of bread was a bridge she built to connect to the community that was also grappling with an economic downturn. Their hearts beat in tandem with hers, an aching desire to survive. In every chat over coffee, Jenna was met with kindness that sparked a forgetfulness of her family's disapproval. Yet, at night, her phone lay silent, a stark reminder of tokens left behind, fraying ties salted with doubt. Then came Sheriff Luke, a glaring storm in human form. He sauntered in like it was the end of the world, guilt etched into his visage. A war veteran, his once vibrant spirit dulled by memories he couldn't shake. Whenever Jenna saw him, he wore the weight of the town on his shoulders but never cracked even a hint of a smile. Their eyes would meet like two ships passing in the night, recognition sparking a question neither had the courage to voice. One fateful evening, tensions flared when the businessman, a slick man in a tailored suit, waltzed into the bakery under the pretense of buying things out. His charming facade couldn't hide the greed beneath. As Jenna confronted him about his unethical practices, her voice wavered but held firm. Just as he dismissed her, Luke stormed in, ready to protect her and the townspeople, the tension palpable. "You think you can bulldoze us?" Jenna shouted, her voice rising above the infuriated murmurs of the townsfolk gathering outside. Fists clenched in solidarity. The businessman sneered, underestimating her resolve. The air crackled with an intensity that made hearts race. The townspeople rallied behind her, their voices rising like a tide of hope against greed. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As Jenna began to understand the depth of this newfound strength flowing through her, Sheriff Luke began to soften in her presence. Their conversations turned meaningful, shedding light on the burdens each carried. Just as they nurtured a budding connection, Jenna's estranged family made a surprise visit, tossing her heart into disarray. Who was she now? Torn between her roots and the town that had welcomed her with open arms, she faced the unknown. Everything was on the cusp of change as they prepared for a final showdown against the businessman, rising tides of resistance brewing among townspeople. Yet, no one anticipated the bombshell that surfaced. What was she willing to sacrifice? Jenna stood poised at a crossroads, hope flickering like a candle ready to be snuffed out. Would she embrace the past or forge a future with Luke? The storm loomed heavy on the horizon, and left her wondering if they would stand united against the winds of change or be torn apart by the very fabric of her choices. Jenna felt the weight of her family's arrival like an avalanche. They filled the small bakery with their presence, loud, chaotic, and demanding. Her mother's voice cut through her like a knife. "Jenna, we need to talk," she said, eyebrows pinched together in concern. Her father stood beside her, arms crossed, silent yet disapproving. The bakery buzzed around them, the scent of fresh pastries and the laughter of townsfolk faded into the background as Jenna's heart raced. They had come to rescue her, to pull her back to the life she had left behind. But was that life what she truly wanted anymore? "I thought you were safe here," her mother continued, eyes scanning the busy counter as if looking for solace in the baked goods. "What kind of a place is this? We were worried sick when we didn't hear from you." Jenna's stomach churned. I'm fine, Mom. This is a good town. The people here, they care about each other, she replied, the words spilling out like flour from a torn bag. But she couldn't help feeling defensive. Luke stood silently towards the back, observing the reunion with a furrowed brow. He was torn. His instincts told him to rush in and shield her, but he sensed this was a moment she needed to navigate on her own. Jenna, these people are not your family. You don't belong here, her father said, growing impatient. This is just a phase, a mistake. You'll see. With every word they pushed her back into her old life, each sentence an assault on her new reality. Yet the voices of the townspeople echoed in her head, those who had shared their struggles, their dreams, their hopes. How could they not see that she had carved a place in the tapestry of this community? She took a deep breath and faced both her parents. I know you're worried, but I'm happy here. I'm learning to be a part of something bigger than myself. I'm not just a mail-order bride. I'm Jenna, someone who has dreams. Her mother's eyes softened for a brief moment, a flicker of understanding surfacing, but her father's brow remained furrowed. Dreams don't pay the bills. You don't know these people. They'll just let you down. With steely resolve, Jenna replied, no, they won't. They've stood by me when I needed it. They've fought for this town, and I will too. As the confrontation simmered, Sheriff Luke finally stepped forward, voice steady. I think you should give her a chance. Jenna's grown strong here, tougher than many. She's not running away. She's standing up. His words hung in the air, a shield against her parents' criticisms. A bond began to form in shared understanding, the connection between them strengthening in that simple moment. But then, just as hope flickered anew, a commotion outside broke their fragile truce. Someone shouted, and the bakery door burst open. The businessman's sneer graced the entrance, not just a shadow, but a storm ready to grasp at Jenna's resolve. You think you can take me on? He called out, voice dripping with arrogance. This town is mine. The townspeople pressed in from behind, fueled by fear and determination. Jenna felt the weight of their gaze, the trust they'd placed in her since she'd arrived. It suffocated yet motivated her. She knew now, in the pit of her stomach, that standing up for them would require everything she had. Are you ready to fight? She asked, looking towards Luke, who stood like a steady tree amidst the chaos. With a nod, Luke stepped closer, his presence anchoring her. Together, he said. Just then Jenna turned to her parents, a mix of anger, love and desperation churning within her. This is where I belong. I need to do this. As she faced the looming threat, Jenna understood one pivotal truth: the time for choosing between her past and her future had arrived. Would she stand with her family or her newfound home? Would she allow fear to guide her or choose hope against all odds? As the cacophony grew louder, she took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to embrace the storm, knowing that her decision would shape not just her future, but the future of everyone she had come to care about. Challenge for the ages loomed before her, and she needed to decide. Would courage or fear chart her course? The air crackled with tension as Jenna stepped nearer to the threshold of the bakery, her heart pounding in time with the chaos outside. Fear and adrenaline tangled within her, fueling a resolve she had never known. Across the room her parents watched, faces clouded with confusion, disbelief, and above all worry. Yet this time worry wasn't enough to hold her back. People of Cedar Grove, Jenna called out, her voice cutting through the tumult like a sharp knife. The townsfolk turned to her, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. This is our town. We won't let anyone take it from us. The businessman laughed, a booming sound that echoed in the cramped space. Your town? This place is nothing but a blip on my radar. I'm here to make money, and I'll crush anyone in my way. You think you can stop me? But Jenna saw the flicker of resolve in the eyes of her neighbors. She felt it swell in her chest, the steady thrum of shared purpose. We have each other. Together we're stronger than any threat. Luke stepped beside her, shoulders squared, the embodiment of solidarity. Cedar Grove has endured too much to be brought down now. We're more than a dot on the map. We're a family. His voice was steady and calm, grounding her in the storm. The businessman sneered, brushing aside their passionate declarations. You think this band of misfits can change anything? You'll regret standing up to me. He took a menacing step closer, but Jenna didn't flinch. This isn't just about you and your greed. It's about the lives you want to ruin. Her voice rose unwavering. She couldn't turn back now. Jenna caught glimpses of her parents' faces, a mixture of shock and dismay, their concern deepening into something resembling pride. Maybe they were starting to see her for who she'd become, this warrior who had finally found her purpose in Cedar Grove. As her heart surged with adrenaline, she turned back to the crowd. We've fought together through storms, loss, and struggle. This is our home, our future. And we will not back down. The townsfolk murmured amongst themselves, energy rippling through the crowd like wildfire. It bolstered her, filling her with belief and determination, even as doubt swept through her parents' expressions. They were in a battle not against an outsider, but against the fear that had clouded their ability to see her as she truly was. "Are you with me?" she shouted over the noise, and the townspeople erupted into a chorus of affirmations. Shouts and cheers rang out, ringing through the bakery and spilling into the street, a surge of unity that fortified her. Yet, just as the moment peaked, the businessman flicked a glance toward his hired hands, a sly grin spreading across his face. "You think I come unprepared?" It was then, like a punch to the gut, that Jenna caught sight of the burly men emerging behind him, men who looked menacing and ready to make trouble. Panic seared through her. They were outnumbered, and fear threatened to creep back into her heart. "Stay close. Don't let fear take hold." Luke's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, encouraging everyone to hold their ground. Jenna squared her jaw and took a step closer to him, determined not to let anyone break her resolve. Together, she whispered, allowing Luke's strength to wash over her like a calming tide. They were about to face something bigger than themselves. Would they stand united or crumble under the weight of a showdown? As the tension escalated, Jenna felt the undeniable shift in the air, a storm of emotions mingling with the brewing confrontation. She knew at that moment what lay ahead wasn't just about Cedar Grove. It was about proving to herself and to everyone that she was no longer a shadow of her past. With one final look at her parents, a prayer in her heart for their understanding, she turned once more to the crowd. "Let us show them what Cedar Grove is made of." As the clash neared, one question raced through her mind. Would they emerge as victors? Or would this be the moment that shattered everything she had fought for? Jenna's heart pounded in her chest, each rhythm drowning the chaos around her. As she stood on that thin line between fear and bravery, she locked eyes with Luke again. His fierce determination urged her on. Together, she repeated, almost a mantra now, believing it could shield them like armor. The businessman chuckled, waving his hand dismissively at the crowd. "You really think you can take me on? You've got spirit, but that won't help you when my boys start throwing their weight around." Behind him, the burly men stretched, flexing muscles that promised trouble. Jenna felt the breath of many townsfolk hitch in alarm. She swallowed hard but refused to let doubt creep in. "Think about what you stand to lose," she shouted at them. "Our homes, our families, our lives. We won't let it happen." As more townsfolk joined her shout, the noise swelled again, a chant of defiance that reverberated through the street like echoes of a bell. They were claiming their ground. It felt electrifying. But Jenna glimpsed movement, a flash of metal in the hands of one of the men. Her stomach dropped. "Stand back," she called, heart racing even faster. "They're armed." Her warning broke through the wave of unity, sending a ripple of fear through the crowd. But it also sparked a fire. With grim resolve, they pressed closer together, wedging themselves shoulder to shoulder, forming a barricade of solidarity. Jenna felt the rush of warmth from their closeness, the way they leaned into one another seeking support. They were more than just a community. They were a family, and no one would take that from them. "Listen, Jenna," Luke shouted over the din, urgency lacing his voice. "We need a plan. We can't just stand here open-mouthed." In that moment, Jenna's mind raced. They had to think smart, but adrenaline surged through her veins like lightning. "We can't back down. We can create a distraction. If we can get them away from the bakery." Luke's eyes lit up. "The old fire barrels behind the bakery. We could set them ablaze, create confusion." She nodded, feeling a spark of hope. "We can use the noise from those to draw the crowd back." "All right," he yelled, turning to the townsfolk. "If we create a diversion, we can get the women and children to safety while standing our ground." People began to nod, a reformed sense of unity igniting the air. Jenna felt surge after surge of determination. This wasn't just about Cedar Grove anymore. It was about protecting everything they had built together. But just as they were about to act, the businessman took a step forward. Is that your plan? A little smoke and fire? Pathetic. He laughed derisively, and with it, some of the townsfolk's bravado wavered. Focus! Jenna shouted. We can't give in to fear. We're fighting for our home. Then, without warning, one of the hired men lunged forward, swinging a bat in an angry arc. The movement sent a shockwave through Jenna. Move! She cried, pushing Luke back just as the force of the swing narrowly missed him. Chaos erupted in an instant. Shouts tangled with gasps as townspeople scattered. Jenna felt her stomach drop. This was at the moment they had feared. A flashpoint that could either break them or push them into action. Regroup! Luke shouted above the clamor, lifting his arms to call the townsfolk back. They couldn't let panic rule them. Jenna's heart raced even faster. The stakes had never been higher. She took a deep breath, preparing to fight with every ounce of strength she had. Another thought ignited within her. They weren't just defending Cedar Grove. They were fighting for their freedom, their voices, their right to exist without fear. But how far would they have to go to protect it all? Jenna steadied herself, resolute to find out just how much they could endure. And as the first strike landed, she could only wonder. Would they be ready to fight back? The air was thick with tension as the businessman's men bore down on the townsfolk, eyes wild and ready for violence. Jenna's heart raced, the sound of her pulse drowning out everything else. Each shout, each frantic movement around her turned into a blur. We can do this, she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of their collective hopes resting on her shoulders. Form a line. Luke yelled, urgency flooding his tone. He grabbed Jenna's hand, squeezing it tight. We're not going down without a fight. She nodded, the grip of his hand grounding her, bolstering her resolve. They quickly fanned out together, stepping shoulder to shoulder in reverence to the people behind them, their families, their friends. From the corner of her eye, she spotted a few of the older men from Cedar Grove grabbing makeshift weapons, shovels, rakes, anything that could offer protection. A memory surfaced of community meetings and potlucks where they shared laughter and stories. The sweetest memories intertwined with the bitter reality they faced now. They were not just standing for homes. They were defending memories that lived in every heart. Now, Jenna shouted, draw them away. With a quick nod from Luke, they signaled the townsfolk close to the bakery. A few brave souls sprinted around the back. The crowd chanted loudly, their voices becoming a tide of desperation as the first few threw stones in a hasty display of defiance. The first flame ignited in the fire barrels, licking upwards with a hiss that broke through the clamor. Jenna watched as the townsfolk's fears shifted to awe. The flickering light reflected in their eyes. It was something beautiful and terrifying all at once. But the businessman wasn't backing down. Jenna saw him lifting a hand, signaling his men. It was like a synchronized dance as they advanced, shouting commands, muscles tense, primal aggression oozing from their every pore. Jenna's stomach twisted. Stay together, she called out, though it felt like shouting into a raging storm. Then it happened. A brawl erupted at the edge of the crowd as one of the men collided with a defender, fists flying, voices fading into primal yells. Jenna felt the visceral shift, the energy spilling over, each person confronted by a deep instinct to fight or flee. She stood her ground, heart pounding, breathing shallow. Luke pressed forward beside her, throwing himself into the nearest menacing figure like a human shield. He grappled with one of the burly goons, and Jenna's gut tightened with fear. Yet admiration flooded her. He was fighting for them all just as she was, just as they all would. Jenna! He shouted amidst the chaos, his voice cutting through the frenzy. Help! Without thinking, she moved. Rushing to grab a broomstick from an overturned cart, she swung it with all her might, feeling the power of collective will behind her. It connected with the man lunging at Luke. The impact echoed, momentarily stunning him. Keep pushing, Jenna urged, spurred by her own adrenaline. The tide was turning. They were no longer just a scattering of fearful individuals. They were a force, heart set on standing their ground. In that moment of chaos and fury, Jenna realized something profound. Every punch thrown, every shout echoed not just defiance but a fierce love for their home, their families, everything they held dear. But just as hope ignited, a loud crack pierced through the air. A shot rang out, echoing ominously over the madness, chilling Jenna to the bone. Silence followed, and her blood turned cold. What just happened? She whispered, fear gripping her. It was a moment that could decide everything. Would they crumble, or would the fire in their hearts burn even brighter? The clarity of their purpose weighed heavily in the air, but fear tinged their bravery. Jenna felt her courage waning for just a heartbeat as she waited for what would come next. Would they all emerge unscathed? Or had the darkness of despair already seeped in? The silence that followed the gunshot was deafening. Jenna's breath caught as the weight of that single crack echoed in her mind. She turned looking for Luke, but her eyes met only chaos. The townsfolk froze, a collective intake of breath pulsing through the air, eyes wide and darting like frightened birds. Luke! Jenna shouted again, searching the faces around for the familiar one that brought her solace. The realization weighed on her. The quiet threat of death hung over them. Was anyone hurt? Fear clutched at her heart. A figure limped forward, clutching his shoulder, the throbbing darkness of crimson seeping into his shirt. It was one of the older men, Mr. Jenkins. The sight sent a shiver down her spine. We need to get him out of here, Jenna yelled, instinctively moving towards him. From across the makeshift battlefield, Luke came into sight, his muscles straining as he pushed another assailant away, eyes fierce and unwavering. Jenna! Get back! He roared, turning just in time to intercept another punch aimed at him. Her heart raced. Who was this man behind the violence? The businessman's enforcers weren't just thugs. They were men blinded by greed, shrouded in the shadows of a twisted ambition. But the fear inside her swiftly transformed to fiery resolve. These were her people. They were her family. In that moment of clarity, Jenna rushed towards Mr. Jenkins, who grimaced as he tried to brace himself against a wall. She wasn't sure who had fired that shot, but they surely wouldn't stop. Can you walk? She asked urgently, her hands on his arms. He grimaced but nodded. We have to help the others, he gasped, surrounded by chaos. And she understood then that fear could not dictate their actions. She couldn't let what had started as a day of hope spiral into despair. Then let us go, Jenna said, her voice steeled with courage. With an arm around Mr. Jenkins, she guided him towards the nearest alley, trying to distance them from the violence. Each step felt like a heartbeat, a connection to the fight still raging behind them. Even as they fled, Jenna's heart ached for Luke, for the people fighting for their homes. She glanced back, seeing the determination in Luke's eyes as he charged into another opponent, fists flying, embodying the spirit of the town. But then something shifted in the atmosphere. She squinted through the dim light of the flickering flames and saw the businessman, his smirking face cut through the chaos, directing his men like puppets, reveling in the terror he unleashed. You'll all regret this, he bellowed, a malignant energy building around him. Somehow, Jenna recognized that his fervor was rooted in fear as well. Fear of losing the power he sought. Jenna's mind raced. This wasn't just about survival, it was about confronting that fear. But how? We need a distraction, Jenna whispered urgently to Mr. Jenkins as they ducked behind another wall. Something that will break their line, take their attention off the fight. His gray eyes met hers, reflecting back the same determination. If we can access the old town hall, there might be fireworks left from the 4th of July. Fireworks? She questioned, the idea igniting a spark in her heart. Yes, if we can light them off, it'll create chaos. Whatever it takes to turn the tide. Let us go then. His strength surged back as they pressed on, moving through the shadows, ignoring the distant sounds of fists and anger, a collective heartbeat of their town. The plan was risky, but they would burn brighter against the encroaching darkness. Jenna felt the rhythm of hope pulsing through her veins. Every step a reminder that this fight didn't belong to the fearful or the greedy. It belonged to them, the brave, and they could unravel the nightmare as they dashed towards the town hall. Jenna's heart throbbed with what they could achieve. Would their daring plan be the spark they needed? Would they shift the momentum and reclaim their home from the brink of ruin? The answer lay just around the corner. The old town hall loomed ahead, its door slightly ajar. Jenna's heart hammered against her ribs as they approached. She could hear the distant chaos, shouts mingling with grunts of struggle. She didn't have time to dwell on what awaited her inside. The moment was charged with urgency. Here, she whispered to Mr. Jenkins, gesturing for him to wait. She took a breath, steeling herself. This was their chance. It was now or never. Pushing through the door, it creaked ominously, revealing a dimly lit room cluttered with old furniture and remnants of past celebrations. Banners still hung from the ceiling, faded but proud. Her heart swelled with memories of happier times, but she quickly pushed them aside. Today was about survival. "Where are the fireworks?" she murmured, scanning the room frantically. The musty air felt heavy with forgotten promise. Mr. Jenkins entered behind her, grimacing as he leaned against a desk for support. "Over there," he pointed, nodding toward a back corner where an old storage box sat. Jenna rushed over, her mind racing. She fiddled with the latch, her fingers shaking with the clumsiness of fear and adrenaline. It clicked open and she gasped, pulling out boxes of fireworks, their colorful exteriors bright against the drab surroundings. "Quick, we need to set them up outside," she declared, her voice louder than intended. She could feel the clock ticking, each second echoing her growing anxiety. "You'll need something to light them with," Mr. Jenkins said, fumbling in his pocket. With a shaky hand, he produced a simple lighter. "It's all I have, but it'll work." "Perfect." Jenna grabbed it, her hand steadying as purpose took hold of her again. Just as she turned to head back outside, a loud crash echoed from the town square, shattering the tense stillness of the moment. "Go," Mr. Jenkins urged, his voice strained. Jenna didn't need to be told twice. She sprinted back through the door, her heart racing not just with fear but with the thrill of hope. Outside, the chaos swirled around her, a whirlwind of sound and anger. But beneath it all, a thread of resolve guided her. She could see Luke still fighting, his brow furrowed, body moving like a machine, but for every blow he struck, two more opponents surged forward. Spotting an empty space near the edge of the square where debris lay, a makeshift stage from the festival, Jenna dashed for it. She set the firework boxes down, her mind racing as she calculated the best way to create a diversion. "Hey, over here," she shouted, waving her arms to catch the attention of Luke and the others. For a second, both sides paused, confusion spreading like ripples in water. She could feel their eyes on her. "Just a little longer," she whispered to herself as she began to set up the fireworks frantically, fingers moving fast as her heart pounded. Each pop and click of opening boxes was drowned out by the shouts and struggles around her. Behind her, an explosion of movement drew her attention. The businessman had shifted his focus, eyes narrowing at her, a growing recognition that sparked something cold inside her gut. He seemed to understand what she was plotting. "Jenna, get back," Luke yelled, his voice cutting through the clamor. "Just hold on," she called back, determination gripping her like a vice. She flicked the lighter, igniting the fuse, her hands trembling but steady with purpose. With one last glance at Luke's steadfast demeanor, any doubt vanished. She was doing this, she was not letting fear dictate their reality. As the fireworks erupted, shooting bright sparks into the sky, she felt a collective gasp ripple through the crowd. Would this distraction be enough? Would it shift the balance in her favor? The answer lay within the explosion of color that lit up the night. But then, in the midst of the spectacle, something unexpected happened. A new threat emerged from the shadows, setting the stage for what would come next. The dazzling fireworks lit up the night, a brilliant display of color exploding across the dark sky. For a moment, both sides paused in awe, their combat momentarily forgotten. But Jenna couldn't afford to celebrate just yet. That pause quickly turned into horror as she felt the familiar eyes of the businessman settling on her amidst the chaos. The moment he lunged forward, she instinctively dropped the lighter, her heart dropping with it. "Run!" she yelled to Luke, panic surging through her veins. She had to warn him to get everyone to safety. She rushed toward Luke, weaving through the scattered debris and people. Every ounce of hope she had built now confronted a stark reality, but her shout did not come in time. She watched as the businessman grabbed Luke by the arm and spun him around. The bravado in Luke's posture momentarily faltered. Jenna's heart stopped as she saw a flash of recognition in Luke's eyes, followed by anger. "Get your hands off me," Luke snarled, looking ready to break free. But the businessman had a much tighter grip. The moment felt suspended in time, like the world had caught its breath. So Jenna sprinted, desperate to close the distance. Her feet pounded against the ground, adrenaline pooling in her limbs. "Let him go," she cried, trying to muster every ounce of strength in her voice. But her scream was one of many lost in the din of the crowd. As she approached, Luke shouted back at her, "Jenna, no." But it was too late. She was too close now. She lunged forward, and in that split second, something snapped inside her, and a flurry of determination. Jenna grabbed a discarded bottle from the ground, a makeshift weapon. It was risky, but desperation gave her courage. "Get away from him!" she shouted again, raising the bottle like a shield. A strange silence fell over the chaos. It felt as though the world outside of them blurred, leaving only this intense moment. The businessman's eyes narrowed in a mix of anger and surprise, but Jenna stood her ground. "You touch him and you will regret it," she warned, her voice honest and unwavering. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, as if the spell had broken, chaos flooded back. The businessman loosened his grip just slightly, and in that hesitation, Luke tore free. Like an animal cornered, the businessman took a step back, eyeing the crowd. "This ain't over," he howled before disappearing into the fray, his anger vibrating in the air long after he was gone. Jenna's heart raced as she turned to Luke, who was now panting, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" she asked, breathless. He nodded but looked troubled. "I can't believe you did that. You could have been hurt, but we're safe," she interrupted, her heart still pounding with adrenaline. "We have to get everyone out of here." Luke took a breath, steadying himself. "You're right." As they began to regroup with the others, Jenna noticed the tension in the air hadn't fully dissipated. The earlier chaos hadn't ended, it had merely shifted. The crowd still buzzed with fear and uncertainty, the danger lingering like a dark cloud. Suddenly another figure appeared. It was Sheriff Whitaker, his expression stern, scanning the square. Jenna felt a flicker of hope at the sight of him, believing that maybe this could turn around. But then she noticed something off. His eyes were fixated not just on the disorder but on her. It was a look that stirred something deep inside. There was worry, yes, but also an unspoken question, a connection perhaps. "Stay close," Luke murmured, grabbing her hand as they approached the sheriff. Jenna could sense their collective awareness of the newfound threat. "What's the status?" Sheriff Whitaker asked with a calm that anchored her. As they began to explain the chaos to him, Jenna's mind raced. She wondered if they had really escaped danger, or if a different battle was just beginning. What would happen now? Just then, an unsettling noise re-emerged from the darkness, stirring an instinctual fear in Jenna's gut. "It wasn't over, not yet." "Stay sharp," the sheriff said, tension rising again. "There's more than just anger out there. Tonight." In that moment, Jenna's earlier hope solidified into a question. Would they face the darkness together? Or would it consume them one by one? Fire Enforcer. Light flickered across the grim faces around her as fear mixed with determination. Jenna could practically taste the tension in the air. She felt it wrapping around her like a spine-chilling mist. But this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone here tonight. They were all in danger. "Sheriff, the businessman, he has been out to get us," Luke said, his voice urgent. "He can't be far. We need to prepare. All of you listen." Sheriff Whitaker stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "I need everyone to stick together. No one goes off on their own. Understand?" Nods rippled through the small group. Jenna felt Luke squeeze her hand tighter. The strength in his grip was reassuring. It felt like a lifeline, pulling her away from the abyss of panic. "Jenna, stay close to me," Luke said, his eyes scanning their surroundings. "If he shows up again, we can't let him take anyone." Her heart swelled at Luke's protectiveness, but doubt lingered. What could they really do against someone so ruthless? Memories of the businessman's cold gaze flashed in her mind, burning with brewing vengeance. The fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. The crowd began to disperse, people moving in chaotic clusters toward the exits, but Jenna felt rooted. A part of her wanted to flee too, but not without securing her friends. "Where do we go?" she murmured, anxiety slipping into her words. "The church. It's a sturdy building, should be safe enough until we figure out our next move," Sheriff Whitaker suggested, glancing at the shambles of the square filled with uncertainty. "Let us go," Luke urged, pulling Jenna with him. Together, they pushed through the mass of frightened faces, adrenaline fueling their resolve. But as they reached the edge of the square, a loud crash echoed behind them, sounds reminiscent of bottles shattering and muffled screams. Jenna froze, her stomach tightening. "Keep moving." Sheriff Whitaker's booming voice jolted her back to reality. They ran toward the church, dodging people who had lost themselves in the chaos. Every step felt like a battle against fear. Jenna glanced back, her heart racing, and saw shadows moving among the debris. The businessman's goons were still here. But what did they want? Why are they so mad? She whispered to Luke, who was breathing heavily beside her. Probably looking for revenge, Luke replied grimly. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. Then we can't let them find us. Jenna's voice shook as she pressed forward. They could hear the yells, threatening and urgent, pushing her to run faster. Finally, they reached the church, its heavy wooden doors standing tall against the chaos outside. But just as they entered, a metallic blast made the earth tremble beneath their feet, vibrating through the ground. What was that? Jenna gasped, fear coursing through her. Stay here, Sheriff Whitaker shouted, ushering them inside and slamming the door shut. He pulled out his radio, eyes darting toward the windows, guarding against any sight of the businessman's crew. The noise outside intensified, a barrage of shouting and footsteps. The moment felt surreal, like the world was spinning off its axis. Is everyone okay? Luke asked, looking at Jenna, worry etched on his face. I don't know. I just wanted to keep everyone safe. Fighting tears, Jenna looked toward the entrance. They were only safe for now. What if the businessman had planned for this? What if they weren't alone? Things are about to get worse, she whispered, dread gnawing at her insides. In that instant, just as all hope seemed lost, they heard footsteps approaching the church doors, slow and purposeful. Jenna's heart pounded like a drum in her chest. They weren't alone anymore. And with that realization came another terrifying question. Who was on the other side? The sound grew louder, and Jenna clenched her fists, heart racing. Was it friend or foe? Would they find sanctuary, or face their worst nightmare? The heavy wooden doors creaked ominously as the figures approached. Light flickered, casting shadows across the church's interior. The atmosphere, once filled with hopeful prayers, now buzzed with a tension that felt suffocating. Jenna's heart raced like a wild horse. What if it's them? She whispered to Luke, her voice quaking with fear. Sheriff Whitaker stood rigid beside the door, a sentry charged with protecting his town. We'll find out soon enough, he said, voice low but steady. They all clustered together beneath the vaulted ceiling, a mix of uncertainty and camaraderie binding them tighter. Just then, the door swung open with a heavy thud, revealing a glint of metal in the dusky entrance. Jenna squinted against the light and felt her breath catch. It was the sheriff's deputy, Sam, his face strained and disheveled. Sheriff, he called, urgency vibrating in his tone. We need to leave now. Immediate panic surged. What is happening? Jenna asked, desperate for clarity amidst the chaos. The businessmen are gathered outside with their crew. They're not just looking to intimidate anymore, they're out for blood. Sam explained, fear sharpening his features. We don't have much time. The townsfolk around her murmured in dismay, but courage flickered to life in Jenna's chest. We can't just run. We need to fight back, she said, feeling momentum build. We've come too far to let fear be the judge of our fate. We'll stand together. Sheriff Whitaker turned to her, a flicker of admiration in his steely gaze. You might just be right, Jenna. He quickly scanned the room. All right, we'll barricade the doors. Everyone grab what you can. Fueled with newfound determination, Jenna rushed to help. Adrenaline coursed through her as they stacked benches and crates against the entrance, knowing the risk they were taking. Each laborious heave felt like a shared act of rebellion, uniting them against the looming threat. Let us move, Whitaker commanded, his voice a steady anchor amidst the shouts and preparations. We'll prepare for their advance. They won to find Cedar Grove an easy target. As they fortified their position, Jenna found her resolve sharpening into clarity. Memories of shared moments, potlucks, laughter, and togetherness fueled her spirit. With every handmade weapon and every coalesced heart, the overwhelming urge to protect their home eclipsed the fear instilled by the businessman's presence. Just as they secured the last chair against the door, the commotion outside swelled. Angry voices clamored for entry, drowning the air in hostility. Jenna's breath hitched. Wait! Sam shouted suddenly, launching towards the window. They're setting up something. They all leaned closer, peering out. The townsfolk's fear morphed into dread as they saw the figures in the distance, some brandishing weapons, while others prepared crude devices that glinted malevolently under the fading light. No, Jenna gasped, the icy realization hitting her like a flood. They're going to storm the church. They want to show us we can't fight back, Luke said grimly, standing beside her. But we're still here, united. We're stronger together. Sheriff Whitaker turned to the group, his commanding presence revitalizing their spirit. There's no backing down. They may think they can crush us, but they don't know our resolve. At that moment, Jenna felt the strength of their community wash over her, a radiant pulse of hope distinct against the darkness. So let us give them a fight they won't forget, she shouted, her voice ringing with determination. Together they prepared for a showdown, hearts united with a single purpose: to defend their home from encroaching shadows. As the first loud crash echoed through the doors, a shiver went through Jenna, but she stood tall, ready to face whatever awaited them. There was no turning back now. This was her fight, her family, and their legacy. Then came the ultimate test: would fear claim their town, or would Cedar Grove rise to claim its fate? The air filled with shouts and crashes, and they braced for impact as the doors creaked under the chaotic pressure from the outside. But amidst the chaos, Jenna's heart lifted with hope. She was where she belonged, ready to face the storm at her side. Unyielding and unbroken as the doors burst open, the world erupted. But there was only one truth ringing clear in Jenna's heart. They would fight, and they would win. Cedar Grove's spirit would shine brighter than any darkness. They were ready. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. They were family, and nothing could tear them apart now. So join their fight. Share this story with your friends who need to feel inspired. And let's keep this moment alive. Subscribe immediately to not miss what comes next. The heart of this community is only just beginning to beat louder. Leave a like now. Every click fuels their hope and pushes us toward the light. Don't wait not even one more second. Comment your thoughts below about what impacts you the most from this story. Your voices matter. Let us keep writing this journey together.